Who really owns free speech after Charlie Kirk's death? A strange new silence. Cancel culture's double-edged sword. A friend of mine once said the measure of a society isn't how it treats the people it loves, but how it handles the ones it can't stand. And the weeks after Charlie Kirk's assassination, that wisdom has been tested and exposed. The public grieving was immediate. Vigils, hashtags, and tributes poured out across the country. But almost as quickly came the ugliness. Memes mocking Charlie Kirk's death, jokes tasteless enough to make a hardened cynic cringe, and voices on the left taking open glee as if tragedy itself were a political victory. America began writing two very different stories. On one side, a nation honoring a man who built his name on open debate. On the other, an avalanche of cruelty that reveled just how toxic politics has become even when death is treated like a win. But then came the consolations. The same crowd that had no problem deplatforming conservatives like Roseanne Barr, or blacklisting Trump supporters, or Trump himself, for nothing more than their vote, suddenly found themselves on the chopping block for being too cruel about Kirk. Jimmy Kimmel, once untouchable in late-night comedy, saw his career cut short. Comedians, influencers, and media personalities discovered that their jokes about Kirk could cost them ratings, contracts, or even their livelihoods. What began as an outpouring of grief had quickly turned into a mirror showing how cancel culture doesn't stay confined to one side of the aisle. And thus the cancel cultural paradox. This raises a complicated question. When does criticism fall under free speech? And when does it cross the line into something that justifies discipline? The internet is full with voices. It's filled to the brim. Some mourned, some mocked, and some weaponized as passing for their own agendas. What caught many by surprise wasn't just the nastiness from Kirk's critics, but the backlash against them. Insensitive jokes about Kirk, memes mocking his death. In this new climate, those weren't just free expression, they became fireable offenses. Major employees acted swiftly, citing reputational damage and insensitivity. Platforms tightened their rules, and some voices were silenced not by mob outrage, but by corporate calculation. And here lies the contradiction. For years, the left weaponized cancel culture against the right. Businesses, schools, and Hollywood declared dissenting opinions unacceptable. If you supported Donald Trump, you could lose your livelihood. If you questioned the woke line, you risked exile. I know that all myself. Now those same people are facing the same blade they once sharpened. Employers, perfectly within their rights, are firing those who bring shame or backlash. Corporations chase ratings and brand protection, not principle. And in a free market, they can do that. Thus, the line between free speech and consequences has been drawn. Let's be clear, employers absolutely have the right to fire employees who embarrass their companies. That's not the same as the state stripping someone of their ability to speak. But when social media giants are hauled before Congress and accused of, quote, letting right-wing violence thrive, or left-wing, they're no longer talking about private discipline. They're talking about government-driven censorship. But there's a dark undercurrent. When the President of the United States, Donald Trump himself, weighed in, not just with words of grief for a fallen ally, but with threats of boycotts, calls for license reviews, and pressure campaigns against media companies and leaning on platforms. Supporters cheered, critics warned that it's not free market accountability, that it's government coercion. And this isn't just cancel culture, it's creeping state pressure. If government officials can lean on private platforms to silence speech, And once Washington gets to decide what is acceptable speech, the First Amendment becomes a suggestion instead of a shield. This creates a dangerous paradox. In the chaos, one truth gets buried. Kirk himself would have never cheered a mob shutting down free speech, left or right. He believed debate, even when messy, uncomfortably kind, was the only path forward. Kirk was a man who built his career on the belief that ideas should clash in the open, not be smothered in the dark. Yet his death is now being leveraged to justify precisely the kind of speech policing he fought against. Which brings us to the case of Jimmy Kimmel and Disney. Now, at the time of me reading this, Jimmy Kimmel has been reinstated, but yet there's still some places that will not carry Jimmy Kimmel. But we're going to talk about this when I wrote this. No figure captures the hypocrisy of cancel culture better than Jimmy Kimmel. Before he reinvented himself as the late-night political voice, Kimmel co-hosted The Man Show with Adam Carolla. The show was filled with beer-chugging antics, skits where women were treated as props, and comedy routines drenched in sexism that would be torn apart in today's cultural climate. Kimmel even performed in blackface while impersonating NBA star Karl Malone, something that has destroyed many careers for others. I mean, ask Kramer. Fast forward in the late-night career, and Kimmel became a proud supporter of cancel culture. He mocked conservatives who lost their jobs, laughed when Trump supporters were silenced and when Trump was taken off of Twitter, and promoted boycotts when it suited the progressive narrative. The irony is unavoidable. The Jimmy Kimmel of late night would have canceled the Jimmy Kimmel of The Man Show. And when Charlie Kirk's death became a cultural flashpoint, Kimmel himself was caught in the cancel storm. He had cheered when right-wing figures were taken down, but suddenly the same system turned on him. His show was yanked by ABC, the very network owned by Disney, showing how quickly the winds of outrage can shift. Disney itself has been a central player in cancel culture hypocrisy. Even Marvel actress Tatiana Maslany, I'm sure I butchered her name, who also starred in She-Hulk, I like She-Hulk, publicly called for political boycotts while being shielded by the same company that had no problem canceling others. She literally, as She-Hulk, works for Marvel, and works for Disney, called for the boycotting of Disney. Oh boy, really? Gina Carano, a conservative actress from The Mandalorian, was fired by Disney for her right-leaning posts on social media. The company that claims to stand for creativity and inclusion has repeatedly acted as judge and jury, deciding which political views are acceptable and which are punishable. But this is the ultimate bite the hand that feeds you moment. Kimmel thrived under the same culture that celebrated canceling conservatives. Disney profited while punishing those with the quote wrong opinions. And now the outrage machine is consuming the very people and corporations that fed it. So let's talk about what Charlie Kirk actually stood for. The tragedy is now Kirk's name is now being twisted into an excuse for the very things he fought against. Kirk built his career insisting that all voices deserve to be heard, even the harsh ones. He welcomed debate because he knew conversation revealed common ground. He rejected cancel culture on principle, and he warned against government overreach because he knew the government powerful enough to silence one side will eventually silence everyone. And yet, in the aftermath of his death, people shouted, "Stand with Kirk," are doing everything but standing with his values. They are using his name as a tool to justifying silencing voices, pushing censorship, and demanding government control over speech. And Kirk would have despised that.